it is. So that's why I just want to talk to as many people as possible and get it out there. Especially during this time where literally anyone can do is walk.
Yeah, I know. There's not many people out.
No, not at all. Just a lot of cars at home, like as I'm going out.
Yeah. What a time to be alive. Technology and just some walking, and that's about all we can do.
Yeah, and is one of the biggest reasons of why I wanted to get you on here, man, because people are going to be super limited with equipment, with everything that they're actually able to do, and I want to really ask you what you think is some of the best ways to do that. But before we do that, I'm super excited to give you a little bit of an intro, because it's well deserved. I'm walking with someone that I consider to be creating one of the golden standards of coaching in Australia. The amount of content that is pumped through your JPS machine is just absolutely incredible. From courses that I can do as a trainer and a coach and then for general pop and anyone who's just interested in the industry, it's just awesome that there's a place for people to go. And you're also the co-founder of JPS Health and Fitness, Airport West and South Melbourne. You compete in bodybuilding, powerlifting, holding an Australian powerlifting under 77 kilo national championship, and a record squat of 255 kilos under 77, which is just incredible, man. I don't know how the hell you did that. And a total of 697.5 kilos. He also handles 50 of his own clients, from one-on-one, online, competitive athletes, and to general health and fitness. And to be completely honest with you, man, I'm taking advantage of someone here because you have had access to some of the greatest coaches in I would say history, from Eric Helms, Jeff Nippard, Brad Schoenfeld, Eric Trexler, all these people that come and speak at your facilities in Australia. Getting you on is just going to be so much value to deliver to people through these times, and I'm just super pumped to have you on, man. Welcome, Samuel.
It's good to be here. Thanks, man.
That's incredible. So where I really want to start with you is a little bit of your background. You do have an interview out there, which I've listened to, so I encourage people to go down to that if you want to get deep into his backstory. But what I really want to know about is specifically how you went with your bodybuilding through the shows that you have done, and through your powerlifting, and sort of the contrast between the two.
All right, so I started lifting in, I would have been like 16, so nearly a decade ago. And then after a couple of years of training, everyone kind of goes, oh, you're pretty big, you're jacked. And then the natural step from there is to go, well, I'm the biggest guy around, I can do bodybuilding. I obviously was not the biggest guy around by any stretch of the imagination. So in 2013, I did a bodybuilding prep along with my brother. That was back when it was the INBA. I dieted down from like 80 kilos to like 61. I think the lowest I weighed was like 60.5, which is very small. Got on stage. It was fucking hard. Like, it was good, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of things that made it tougher than it needed to be. Like, we didn't really know what we were doing at the time, so it was just like cutting food out, training our asses off. Like, programming wasn't really structured or anything. And then, competed in a couple of shows. I did pretty well. Like, nothing, groundbreaking. It wasn't, a national holder, like a title holder or anything like that. And then it took ages to recover from that. Physically, psychologically, all of that probably took, a year and a half before I was back in a decent place to get into training and like worry about nutrition in any capacity again. And then just training and enjoying myself, and then someone told me I was strong, and that's how powerlifting started. Pretty much. So powerlifting is much more of a passion of mine, just because it's a lot more objective. I think you either did or didn't lift the bar. It's not so much based on people's opinions like bodybuilding. Like, how many times have people been to a show and you feel like there's a clear winner, but they don't place, or there's I don't know, there's
it sort of goes in the other way.
yeah, there's just such discrepancies between what they say they're looking for and who wins, who loses. It's just, I don't know. I still appreciate the sport and everything that is involved, but powerlifting is probably more my cup of tea.
Yeah,
Probably a lot less involved and more objective.
Yeah, 100%. I think with powerlifting, it's more, I don't know, I think everyone is a little bit more excited no matter whether they win or lose. Like, it seems like a day where everyone is, no matter where you place, you feel good because at most times you felt your strongest. That's sort of like the best and strongest you felt ever, as you would hope. Whereas with bodybuilding, you can look really good, but you can also feel really terrible for a long part leading up to it. And that can sometimes dampen it if you don't get the placing you want, because it's sort of like, was it all for nothing? Or, you start to second guess why you did it in the first place.
Yeah, I think there's just such a large time investment for most people for a bodybuilding prep. And something I tell all my clients is that it's like, if you are doing it to win or for like the first prize, it's like, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. I'll go down to a shop, like a trophy shop, and I'll buy you a first medal, and we can be done with it. But if you're doing it for, for the kind of more intrinsic motivated reasons, like you want to see how far you can push yourself, you want to, try and get into the best like shape you can. That's very much different. I don't know. I think people have Eric Helms and like Andrea Valdez, they do a lot to kind of word people up on what's truly involved in a bodybuilding prep, the good and the bad, so people aren't just going into a prep thinking it's all like, sunshine and rainbows.
It's important. And I think just people put it down to, it's just about chicken breast and broccoli and eating heaps of times a day, but it's really about you as a person trying to optimize every single thing in your life purely for a physique. You have to drop everything else that isn't a priority to getting to looking good and keep everything in that does contribute to it. And it's taxing, and a lot of your priorities fall off, just the amount of pressure it can put on relationships and everything else. It can be pretty bad. I've never actually competed in powerlifting. Is it similar to that? How similar is a prep to coming towards a meet when it comes to powerlifting?
Still a lot less involved. Like, look, the more probably seriously you take it and the higher level you compete at, obviously there'll always be outliers to this, but I think the higher level you compete at and the more like experienced you are and the more seriously you take it, that will kind of like lead you to put more time and effort into, getting everything right, really making sure that, you have enough time to get through your training, you're diligent with warming up, you're managing your nutrition and weight, you're getting plenty of sleep, maybe you're going to see like a physio, you're getting like some additional kind of like physical therapy to like keep your body in check. Like, all of those things will add up, but still significantly a lot less involved than a bodybuilding prep. Like, you don't have to do hours of like cardio, you don't have to drag yourself to the gym. It's like, more than anything, you're probably more motivated to get to the gym later in the prep because the weights get heavier and you start to like perform a bit better even though your body feels like shit.
Yeah, right. It's so interesting. And a lot of people with bodybuilding, you see your weight decrease almost the whole way through. So you see like a little bump up near the start of the prep, just because I think everything becomes a little bit more focused and a little bit more structured and everything's feeling good because, and you start off obviously on slightly higher calories, so you have all this power and strength, and then from about 12 to 10 weeks out, you just see this nice little, you either see a nice dip or you have to work real hard to try and maintain that.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, in 2016, I was dieting down from like 77-ish kilos, and I was just doing like a mini cut, and then I was like kind of halfway through my diet and I got down to like 71, and I was like, oh, my training's going pretty well. I could probably diet all the way down to 66 and go for a national record. And it did not go well. Like, because, you know, that's what happens when you diet and try and mix strength sports. Like, there was like just this distinct like period where it was like everything was going kind of really well, and then it was just like getting to a cliff and everything just free fell. All of a sudden, like, my strength was gone. I couldn't, like, it was woeful. It sucked. But, you know, lesson learned, right?
Exactly right. And that's something that I want to talk to you about as well, is because you've been training from such a young age. How old are you now, man?
26.
Yeah. So, you know, 10 years worth of experience. And let's face it, the amount of content that's out there now, you know, there's so much of it. But when you started training at 16, I only started training 6 years ago. No, that's a lie. It's probably closer to 8 years. And back then there was just so much trial and error. And how important do you think being able to have that time for the people that are sort of getting into training now or never had the chance to focus on it specifically, how important do you think that trial and error stage where there wasn't as much information around is to where you are now?
Look, I think it's really important, to be completely honest. Like, I think people need to go out and kind of make mistakes and just, like, you know, go into the gym and just do whatever feels right. Not to say that it is right, but I would say the first probably like 3 years that I trained was just pure, like, in retrospect, it was like kind of balls to the wall, go in, like, max out. There was no real rhyme or reason. Like, we probably started following programs after like 2 years of training. Like,
were you into the bro training?
Yeah, like, man, I just trained chest all the time. Like, barely ever trained legs. Was kind of just did what you wanted to, and it was good. It was fun. Like, you know, in hindsight, it's like you look back and go, you know, those days were fun. You go to the gym with all your friends, and, you know, or you would all do the same session. It'd be like 8 chest exercises. I think everyone needs to go through those kind of like foundational stages of, you know, trial and error, making mistakes, and you have to learn, because, like, you know, it's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger effect just at play. You start off within like 6 months, you think you know everything, and then as you kind of progress further and further, you realize just how little you actually know. And then, you know, 10 years later, you're still like, I know nothing about this, and you just kind of hope for the best.
There's just so much interplay with it. But, you know, that time, those couple of years, however long it is for a person, you know, it's different for everybody, obviously, but taking those couple of years to find out what you actually enjoy, because so much of training that isn't spoken about. Everyone's talking about efficiency. Everyone's always talking about, you know, how to get the most results from a program. But what people seem to forget is you have to, if you don't enjoy it and you're not excited about that program, then it's going to yield pretty low results.
Yeah, like, that's something I try and kind of drum home to my clients and just the people I program for. It's like, I'll regularly ask them, what are the exercises? What do you want to do? What are some exercises you want to do in this program? We'll have an idea about where we're taking training over the next, you know, 3 to 6 months. And then it'll be like, okay, what are some exercises you want to do in this block, for example? And they always kind of like default to thinking, what I'm going to say, I want to do these exercises, and he's going to take them out. It's like, no, it's like, I'm going to make a point to get those in there, because then if you enjoy your training, you'll stick to your training and you'll get a lot further, rather than if I just said, what are the exercises you love? And then I just gave you all the ones you hate. Like, enjoyment of training is probably the most important, determinant of long-term success. Because if you hate it, why would you do it? You just stop.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time before you fall off it. And yeah, starting with exercises, starting with a routine. I think a couple of people that I've worked with have been a little bit shocked at how I approach it when I tell them we're writing up a program, and I'm sort of like, okay, well, you tell me how many days you think you can train. You know, I'm letting them take the reins, and they're like, hang on, I paid you to give me the direction and just tell me and see as I say and do as I do. But what you're forgetting in that process is a big part to your long-term success is how much I know about you and how much it fits into your current lifestyle. And I think that sort of premise is more important now than ever.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I want to really drum down with you. And I want to talk about programming, and specifically programming for people in today's climate, because we get the luxury to sort of pump out a lot of content right now very fast. So the industry in itself has to be very fast moving, and we can't this is more of a personal question. Are you finding that your clients are finding ways to get their workouts at home? Like, how much equipment are you usually working with when it comes to your community?
Look, I have had, over the last week, I've programmed for people who have full home gym setups, all the way through to rocks out the front of their house. It's like where there is a will, there is a way. Like, it's like, you just need to be a little bit creative. Like, yesterday I was on the Bunnings website having a look at like ways that you could go and spend like $100 and then come home with effectively gym equipment from Bunnings. Like, you can buy 25 kilo bags of cement and stuff for like $8. That's a 25 kilo weight right there.
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
Why can't you just attach that to like a pole or something, or if you really, really want to, you'll find a way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things we're trying to nail down. If that's what you are going to miss and that's what you want to do, there's a way to do it. Don't use it as an excuse to not do it, because you can. It's going to take a little bit of work. It's going to take a little bit of money. It's going to take a little bit of creativity. But if it truly is a passion for you, there is 100% a way to make it happen. Do you think that is optimal during this time? Like, what are you actually telling your clients that have come to you and sort of like, they're more freaking out? Has anyone actually come to you and have been like, man, I don't think I'm going to be able to get through this. I think I'm going to put on a lot of weight. I'm going to regress so bad. But I don't, because they're just losing the motivation to get into the gym, or, to start those home workouts at home. Yeah. Like, how are you tackling that?
So I very much would try and tackle it on a case-by-case basis. Like, you kind of, I think with any like client-coach relationship, you need to know like, well, what makes someone tick. Like, I have some people who are like in prep for nationals in like a couple of weeks, and it's like all of a sudden that's kind of off the cards and they're, demotivated. And it's like, all right, well, we can still do something. For the most part, most of my more intermediate, say, to advanced lifters, I'm just telling them, let's try not to go backwards. Like, let's just try and preserve as much muscle mass as we can. We can use this as a opportunity to focus on, different energy systems. We can train for like kind of different outcomes, and we can just have a little bit of fun with it. And then, in 6 months, it's like maybe you recover a little bit more. Maybe like, your connective tissue in your body like has a bit more of a time to, get back to baseline. Then, in 2, 3, 6, however long it is, we can get back into it and you're in a better condition, better shape, and then we can go hard, but not too hard.
That is music to my ears, Samuel. Like, that's pretty much the exact conversation I had with a lot of my guys who were on that train to gaining as much muscle as possible. They were so motivated, so focused, and it sort of got stripped away from them. And they've been able to get onto some weights, like a couple of dumbbells here and there. Some people have done really well and they've got like the full house set up gyms, but a lot of people sort of are stuck with either one set of mediocre dumbbells or like a couple of resistance bands. And I'm turning around to them and saying, this is a time that we can. It's not very hard to maintain. It's very hard to gain muscle in most cases, but it's half as hard to maintain. And once you realize that, and if we can just sort of put tension on the muscle in any way possible, then we can maintain a lot of it. Granted that our food is good, and I would like you to touch on that a little bit, but if we can sort of keep that structured and have a little bit of a goal behind it, there's no reason to why we're going to lose strength, lose muscle. And I want people to come to when the gyms open up, when they do, whether it's a couple of weeks from now, 6 months from now, it doesn't matter. But when it does, we're pumped, ready just to attack it as soon as it comes in, not spend 3 months trying to get back into it.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely. It's going to be an interesting, X period of time over the coming months, but I just think people need to probably take a bit of a step back and appreciate that it's, out of their control, it's out of our control. So try and make the best of a, bad situation. It's not the end of the world. If you can even consider, if training is even one of your worries, you're lucky. You know what I mean?
You are in a very,
if that's
very
what you're worried
good place.
about, you're one of the lucky ones as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And that's such a good point. The training is a blessing. Being able to do that is, it's something that some people just do not have the luxury. And now, there's plenty of people out there that have gotten to incredible physiques and never lifted a barbell in their life. So if that's your main goal, it's about adaptation. It's about changing what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Definitely.
So in your experience, this is going to sound like a silly question maybe to you and me, but I really want to talk about adherence with you and how important getting people to follow a program, because anyone can take a program, anyone can download a program. And if people were to do it and follow what a lot of these cookie cutter programs did, I think majority of people would see a little bit of an increase if they did it exactly how that was meant to be. How important is it that people are sticking to it every single day to actually get the results?
I think adherence is obviously really important, don't get me wrong. I just think people tend to mess it up when they either go 100% or they're either 100% on or they're just 100% off, and there's no kind of middle ground. I think for the most part, people need to be setting themselves up for success where they can, adhere 80, 90% of the time. There's room for flexibility. There's room to, have some kind of, degree of not being on. But that isn't going to derail their progress. I think I see it all the time. Like when people, more so with nutrition, like training is a lot easier to probably be, 100% on. It's like you should go in, you show up, you take your training seriously, and then you leave. But I think from a nutrition standpoint, when people trying to adhere, and 100% of the time they're like, yeah, I'm on. It's like, oh, I can't eat out. I can't do this. I can't do that. Or it's like, I'm not going to do that. I think that creates more problems. It's just it's unrealistic. And I think being realistic in what you can adhere to is the most important part of adherence. Because if you set yourself up and you say, yep, I'm going to adhere to this thing, and what 100% adherence is just unreasonable and unrealistic, and then a week later you can't adhere and then you just drop off the bandwagon, well, that wasn't a very good plan in the first place, was it? So I think when it comes to adherence, it just needs to be, it's like you don't need to be perfect all the time. You just need to be pretty good all the time. And you need to work out what is actually attainable and what's achievable for you and your life circumstances, and you have to take everything into consideration. Oh, you've got kids. Okay, well, maybe you need to cook meals for them as well. So maybe saying you're going to eat, out of containers for the rest of your life is not realistic. It's hard.
And how much of that responsibility lies on the coach to make that program flexible to them? Do you think it relies on them purely to create a plan where they feel like they're still sticking to it, even if it's not considered 100% to put in the flexibility in? Or do you think it's up to the client to make those decisions on the day that they're in?
I think it's equally on both the coach and the client. It's like both of them have to take 100% responsibility. But at the end of the day, it's it doesn't matter how good a plan is that a coach creates if the client's not sticking to it. And it doesn't matter how well the client sticks to a program if the coach hasn't done their due diligence and made sure that actually aligns with what they're trying to achieve. There needs to be open communication and a good dialogue between both the coach and the client, a good relationship for that matter, so that they can actually develop a plan that factors in their unique and individual circumstances and is something that they can understand, most importantly, and adhere to, and that they buy into and believe. Because if I write a perfect plan for someone and say, it doesn't matter, don't worry about your life, don't worry about your kids, this is the perfect plan for you, if they don't understand it, they don't buy into it, they don't believe it, then it's shit anyway. It doesn't matter how good it is, because they're not going to stick to it.
And it's not going to produce the results that they were hoping for, because they just can't complete it. And are you taking that into how are you, I guess, talking to your clients through this time? Is it purely through email? Are we doing FaceTime video calls? What's your sort of plan of attack here?
I've been trying to get some FaceTime with all my clients via Zoom, just to connect with them. It's most people don't really have much of a chance to get out and see other people. It's for myself, for example, it's I've probably gone from seeing multiple 100 people in a week through the gym to maybe 5 to 10 different people, and that's it, which is a massive decrease from a social aspect. So I've just been trying to organize Zoom calls with them all. I took someone through a training session yesterday. He went to the park and took his laptop. That was definitely an interesting experience for me. But it's again, it can be done. It's if you really want to, why not? We're all kind of in this boat together. So yeah, I've been trying to connect with them. It's especially the ones that I've been programming for at home. It's by them connecting via video, I can see what they're working with at home. We can kind of be a little bit more creative and troubleshoot, and work out where they're going to be training, what is available to them, and how we can best approach it.
And the type of setting as well.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, just knowing whether they're training completely outdoors at an oval or if they're training in a room in their house. I think all of those variables matter, and you can say anything you want on a check-in sheet when it comes on a weekly check-in that you would do with a coach normally, but being able to look at them eye to eye and ask them straight out, how are you dealing with this? Because I can write you up a 6-day full body program that I consider to be where I would consider someone would be able to get gains and actually see real results during this period. But if it's just not, if I look at you and I can see that you're struggling and it's hard to get motivated to even just get off the couch because you've been working from home for 8 hours, and you just get into a slump and you start just snacking on food, because the more you sit, the more hungry you get. And it's just this little cycle. And if you can't tackle that, and sometimes I was speaking to someone yesterday, I had a call with one of my clients, and we were talking about the podcast, and they were just being locked up at home at the moment all day, just having a familiar voice talking about something that I love was all I needed to sort of change the motivation and to get going again and to feel like I was back on track. So, I think that element of actually being there is going to be super important through this time.
Yeah, I agree. I just think, you need to do your best to for people to stay motivated, but also to understand that there'll be days where you feel highly motivated and you'll be yep, I'm going to train, I'm going to do that session at home, I'm going to meal prep, and I'm going to do all these good things for myself. And there'll be days where you just go, fuck it, throw your hands up and say, I'm going to sit on the couch and do nothing. And we just have to...
And both are okay.
Both are okay. Both are human. It's we can't control everything all the time, but we need to kind of do as much as we can to set ourselves up for success where and when possible.
Yeah, and I guess it all, like I said, it's completely understandable for priorities to shift at this time. Obviously, for people that were competing for a competition, I completely understand if that's no longer on your cards and it's not really something that is going to drive you anymore, and having to switch that, whether it is, letting fitness take a bit of the back burn off. So instead of training that 6 times a week, you bring it down to 2 or 3. I don't feel any judgment in that. I don't see anything wrong with that. And I don't see you even regressing from that, because all exercise and fitness and everything should be a part of your lifestyle. It shouldn't be something that you're forcing. It should be something that has adapted into what you already do. So if that changes and what you were doing has changed, it's completely normal for it to drop down, for you to not I don't want to say care as much, but you don't need as much demand, because you're probably not out as much, eating as much. There's so many variables to take into, and exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just an interesting one. Like, everyone's going to be a little bit different with how they need to approach it and what it's going to look like for them. So it needs to be tackled on a case-by-case basis, I think, for the most part.
Yeah,
that'll be the best way to deal with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why my main goal of this podcast is just to open up that conversation of all the great coaches of Australia and beyond are doing during this time to make sure that their clients are feeling taken care of, and feeling like there's some leadership there on that health and fitness, because telling people that it shouldn't affect it at all, and it's business as usual, and if you want it, you find a way to make it happen. Only having that approach is going to be really damaging to some people that just can't do that. And in the same token, telling people not to worry about it and just leave it for a couple of months and just come back when the gym's open can be very detrimental as well, because that's a long time, where we could potentially be looking at.
We're going into the
a couple of weeks, a couple of months.
No one knows.
Yeah, exactly. No one knows how the rest of this year will go out, and people need to be prepared for their actual lifestyle habits they have to form. I don't think people really respect how hard they worked to create the habits that they have so far. To create the habits that have gotten them to a place where a gym is a place that they love. Not many people start at the gym and love it. Most people come in, get really sore, think it's a waste of time, and then they do it again, and then they do it again, and then they start to enjoy the feeling, and then they start to miss the feeling of being sore because they've been training so frequently, and it builds over time. And people have to be prepared to put in that work in a different way into different styles of training.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So I want to have a little bit more I want to delve a little bit into the science, or I guess when it comes to the program design. So you're training for people at home now, there's basically a couple of different ways we can look at how we structure reps and sets. So we can look at it as, say, 3 sets of 10 for an exercise, or 4 sets of 12, and you just do them with however much rest and whatever tempo that you think you should be. We can do Rpe scales, which essentially I would love for you to go into a little bit more detail here, because I know you guys are massive on some of this stuff. So Rpe is essentially how hard that set was for you, basing it on a scale of 1 to 10, 9 and 10 being like, that was absolutely ridiculous. I don't think I could get another rep. And obviously lower being, that was pretty easy. And one of the more interesting ones that are coming around now is RIR, so reps in reserve, which I personally love, and I think is a really good way to train for people now, especially when maybe the amount of weight that they have is limited. Give me a little bit of an insight there and where you're at with that style of training and how you're programming.
So Rpe and RIR, I think, are very heavily interrelated in the sense of they kind of marry up really nicely. So you could say an Rpe of 9 was roughly an RIR of 1, because you had one more rep left in the tank based on your subjective perceived level of difficulty of that set or whatever you're basing it on. I think, given a lot of people don't have access to gym equipment at the moment, a lot of people that have some will be probably more lighter, moderate weights, or even bands. So I think that the Rpe system kind of becomes a little bit less useful, just because if we're working with high rep ranges and lighter loads, it's going to be a lot harder to pin down how truly difficult, or the actual rate of perceived exertion of a set. I'm not sure if anyone, of your listeners, if they've ever gone and done, say, a high set of a high rep set of leg extensions or something. You put it on a 50%, 70% load, and say do as many reps as you can, and they say, I can't do any more, and you say, go and do 5 more, and they do, right? Because it's like, because it's not a maximal load, it's like you can kind of keep going, and more often than not, it's kind of your work capacity is going to be a limiting factor, or like your mindset of, how challenging or how much more you can do will prevent you from actually pushing further. So I think, that being said, at the moment, I think most people just need to kind of work to what they physically perceive to be like quite challenging. I don't think you should be tying it to like an RPE or saying you need to work everything to an RPE 9, because what's an RPE 9 with bands? You know what I mean? Like if you rest, for like 2 seconds, you probably get another rep out. You might be there. You might be there all day. So I think we need to like factor in that that it needs to be realistic and not come at the cost of time and like just keeping training within reason. So I think for now, people just need to be like working out whatever equipment they have is, and training to a difficulty level that is appropriate for the set and rep range that they're working with. So it's like if you have lighter weights or you're using bands, then you're going to be working with probably more sets, higher rep ranges, and shorter rest periods. And I think that's probably, then that'll dictate like the difficulty level. Like you can make training really challenging with light weights, but using tempos, pauses, pulses, all sorts of kind of like neat little tricks.
Just by getting a little bit creative.
I don't think that it needs to be tied to, it needs to be an RPE 9, it needs to be an RPE 8. I just think like, you don't have the luxury of having, exact loads, right? You can't just go, maybe most people can't just go and load up, 72.5 kilos on a bar and go and bench press. So they're doing banded push-ups, right? It's like, make it challenging and work to, maybe set a rough kind of guide as to how challenging you want it to be, and then off you go. Like, I don't know, I think people just need to try and work as hard as they can within reason, without just making it like, unreasonably challenging or working to absolute failure. Like, albeit if you work to absolute failure with bands, that's going to be largely different to working to absolute failure with, 80% of your 1 rep max.
Free weights.
Like that'll cook you for probably a week or 2. Whereas bands, you'll probably be fine within 2 days to go again, just because the intensity is so low. Yeah. Relatively.
Yeah, the intensity, the amount of weight that's there is just not enough to create, to create as much damage as obviously a higher percentage of your 1RM would be. So essentially what you're saying there is that for people right now, it's the programming side of things. You need to find a way to make it difficult, the difficult sets and the difficult training that you're going to go through is what's going to be able to get you to maintain or potentially progress depending on other factors, but it has to be difficult. And so, maybe reducing one of the strategies that I've been using with a couple of my guys is, they've sort of got the same amount of, they've only got like set weights. And what I'm telling them is, look, let's get a rep range of say 50, and I want you to do it. I want you to try and get it as in the least amount of sets as possible. And whenever you can't get another rep, I want you to rest 15 to 20 seconds, and then I want you to go again. And then then essentially how we're going to track that progress is to watch those sets decrease or get more reps in the sets over time. And that is going to be a way that we can actually still track, even though we can't go up in weights, even though we can't do anything else, we can still track how, if we're getting stronger, if we're getting, better conditioning, I think having that way of tracking is going to be super important, because I've had people that have sort of come to me and said like, look, I'm just going to need something to, I guess, compete against. I love having those numbers in there and saying, all right, that's it, this is what I'm going to go for.
No, I think that's super important for a lot of people. Approach it as well. Like maybe week 1, you've never used bands before, and you go, okay, well, I'm gonna just work until I don't feel like I can get more than a handful of reps out, and you go and do, you know, your banded push-ups, and you go, I got 15, 14, and 10. Perfect. You got, 20, 38 reps or 39 reps. And you go, sweet. Next week, I'm going to try and get 40 or more reps.
Yep.
And that's how you progress it. You kind of keep your rest periods the same, you keep the loading the same, and you're just trying to add reps to it. But again, it's like, we just don't want to be, you know, you want to be conscious
100%.
of how many reps you're just adding in, because, you know, time's going to be a factor at one point. So we need to, and like, make it more challenging in other ways, so you're not just like coming at the cost of time every time you're training, you know, adding in more reps and more time.
Yeah, it's taking longer and longer. For, obviously, once again, it's very case dependent. Let's say someone was doing specifically body weight training, and they were doing it, so there was no bands, no dumbbells. They only had stuff that they were doing at home. So it was just like lunges, air squats, maybe holding a couple of light household items. How much time would you set aside for that? Do you think there's a factor there? Do you think people should be spending that normal amount of time that they would in the gym? Are you suggesting that people should shrink it down a little bit to keep it a little bit more achievable? Where are you at there?
Answer, just because it's like some different fitness levels are going to determine like kind of how easily or how difficult like a body weight session is for someone. If someone never trains with high rep ranges and you go and say, go do like 15 body squats with a 3-second tempo, like they're going to probably be quite challenging for that person, because maybe they don't have like the greatest work capacity. I know that would probably floor me. So I certainly think that time-wise for a session, if you typically work, you know, with like slightly higher intensities, let's say like 75% plus on like main movements like squats or deadlifting or bench or, you know, even leg press, sort of those exercises, it's like you're going to cut out a decent period of time so you don't have to warm up or like, you know, get physically and psychologically prepared to lift. It's like you don't need to do much to just get into body squatting. But yeah, I would say slightly shorter sessions, because you'll have shorter rest periods. Like you're not going to need a rest for much more than maybe like a minute to a minute and a half, absolute kind of top end, if you're doing absolutely no weights. And you can probably do like more circuit-based training. But again, you just want to be conscious that you're not going too high with, you know, rep ranges, or, you know, pushing too far out of like, you know, what we would kind of deem hypertrophic training. It just depends on, again, it depends on your goals. If someone turns around and says, you know what, I'm going to use this time to focus on my running and cardio training, great, go do that. And then just come back to resistance training in a couple of months or whenever you can.
And it's not really a big deal if someone does that. I had someone that for the last 12 months has been strictly hypertrophy. He said literally, he's like, I don't care how much body fat comes on, I don't care about anything else, all I want to do is get big. Just make that happen for me and let's do it. And a week into being at home, he turns around, he's like, you know what, I've actually really liked this conditioning stuff. He's like, I've been enjoying the higher intensity, the circuit style. You know, he's like, I've actually been enjoying it, so I think I want to use this time to focus it. And I said, fantastic. I was like, if anything, it's going to sort of help in the long term, because it's going to bring some of your baselines down. And if we can just do something to maintain the muscle while just dropping the baseline needed to keep that muscle, then as soon as you get back into the gym and you get back into your regular training, we should see some pretty big spikes in muscle protein synthesis, in muscle tissue and everything.
To shift your focus from, you know, hypertrophy or strength training and focus on those other energy systems and other like kind of outputs of and outcomes of training. You know, especially for strength training, like strength is like largely neural, and it's like you're probably not going to lose that much strength if you're not training for, you know, a month or two. It's like you'll lose some, but it'll come back pretty quickly, provided you get back into it with, you know, some consistency when you can. So I think people should just not worry too much about, you know, losing all their strength or losing all their muscle. Just focus on preserving as much as you can for now, and then just do everything that's within your power at the moment, and don't get too caught up on what you can't do. That'll just make you depressed. Man,
Are you going to start running, Samuel? Is that your next goal?
Like, I'm going to say it's not easy.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to start running though. I don't. It's like I'm fortunate, like owning a gym, where I would typically spend 14 plus hours there a day. That's kind of like home, so I can still go and train. But even then, it's sad to go into a gym where there's normally hundreds of people over a day in there, and there's no one in there. So I don't know. I'm just gonna try and survive like the rest of us.
Yeah.
Just get through it.
I feel you, man. I feel you. Last thing, when it comes to programming, or I guess just giving people some value for things that they can action right now in this current climate. I want to talk a little bit about some nutritional strategies. Obviously, we're going to be sitting down a hell of a lot more, which is for most people going to be reducing their NEAT down quite a bit. How should we tackle that? What are some things that we need to know in that space to, keep body weight stable?
That's already probably a good way to be approaching it. I don't think if you've lost access to your normal training and it's like you're unable to lift moderate or heavier loads, and it's like you've just had to significantly vary the way you train, I think now's probably not a good time to be in a big deficit or to be dieting super hard, just because you're going to run the risk of losing more muscle mass than you're probably willing to part ways with. So I think for anyone who's in a deficit and can't train the way they normally would, probably now's a good time to move towards maintenance and just focus on preserving as much muscle mass as you can. For anyone who's in a large surplus, I'd probably also say, maybe now's not the time if you can't train, as normal, because again, if you can't kind of put that same level of work in, you're not putting as much, stress on your body or your muscles as you're training, because you're using bands or light dumbbells, you're going to run the risk of putting on more body fat than muscle mass, and that's probably not what you're bargaining for either. I think for the most part, most people probably, obviously there's going to be outliers again, but most people should probably just shift their focus towards trying to maintain their weight, maintain their fitness, or maybe again, like shift their focus from their fitness to things that they can do, like running or like more cardio kind of based outcomes, and just trying to preserve their muscle mass for the most part. I think just trying to remain active, having like a regular schedule and routine for your day will go a long way to help that. If people find themselves like snacking or eating at irregular times, that's probably a slippery slope to like weight gain or less stable like outputs as far as their nutrition goes. Like if you're if you go to bed at midnight one day and wake up at 11 a.m. the next, and then you eat breakfast and then you're having lunch and it's all over the place and you don't know what you're doing, that's probably not going to be the most conducive way to like stabilizing your weight. So I think having a routine, trying to keep things consistent, meal prepping and planning as much as you can, like they're all going to go a long way to just like helping you keep things in your control. I think that's the most important thing. You're just not giving up too much control for the time being.
Yeah, keeping the routine, keeping the structure. I wanna ask you, because obviously with a lot of your coaches, clients, everyone there, they would be so proficient in tracking their calories, knowing their maintenance calories. They'll be very in and around that so often, and everyone will be talking in that language. For the people that are just clicking in now and they're just they've now just realized, wow, like if I don't do something now because I've stopped everything, I'm gonna have to really focus on something to keep me active and to keep me motivated. How would you suggest someone finds their maintenance calories? Do you have a calculator? Do you have something on your website? Is there like a little trick that you use?
Look,
how does someone
honestly,
know that they're eating
no real,
at maintenance?
100% surefire way to find maintenance. I think most people's activity levels have probably dropped to some extent because now you're not able to go out as much, especially in Australia. It's like you're not going to the shops, you're not going out, to catch up with friends, you're not walking to and from your car as much, because we're mostly at home. And there's only so much walking you're going to do at home. No doubt there'll be some people who are very much making a deliberate effort to keep their activity up, or at least to maintain it. But I think just determining calories or maintenance kind of your maintenance levels, I think the best way to go is it's going to be a little bit of trial and error, and just make your peace with that. Go on any of the websites or apps where you can the calculators online, punch in your details, your body weight, how active you are. Make sure you're being honest when you're entering your activity levels. I think that's probably one thing I see the most, is most people overshoot their activity levels. They think they're more active than they actually are.
Yeah, people think that they go for a 30-minute walk on their lunch break and they're suddenly very active. 4 to 5 times a week and getting maybe 10,000 steps, and you're just an average body weight, you're probably kind of moderately active. I think very active is probably more on the end of you're going out and you're going for runs and you're doing longer duration training bouts. But yeah, literally go onto any of those calculators, punch in all your details, maybe go into a couple and get a baseline, and then just average it out, and then start from there. Just maybe you're tracking your nutrition, keeping things consistent. If your weight starts to come up a little bit, over a week or two, then that you just need to drop some calories back and make a change. I think just making sure you're being consistent in what you're measuring. So measuring your weight regularly, making sure you're tracking and weighing food so you know that what you're actually putting in, and then you can therefore control the output, which is your weight. So it's if you're always eating the same thing for breakfast, that's great. That's going to make things easier when it comes down to making a change. But yeah, I just think people probably need to be patient with it. Give it a week or two. You just need a starting point. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to at least be somewhat accurate. And then it's just where we're starting is informed by some science and some best practice, but it won't be perfect for you. Work out what it is. If you gain weight, that sucks. Make a change. If you lose weight, fantastic. Maybe you can bring your calories up. Yeah, and that's exactly right. It is going to be such a thing of trial and error for people, because even what maybe for people that had their maintenance before this and they were pretty confident in that, chances are that's going to change, because your maintenance is very fluid, because it's also going to be dictated by how much you do move throughout a day. Just the type of foods that you're eating will play a small effect. So there's going to be factors that are going to change every day to your maintenance calories. So you need to find some sort of structure or some sort of way to know how much you're eating, even if it's not perfect. What I really want from this podcast is I want to talk to the people that are so into training and have already done all their due diligence, and they've got this plan and they're feeling really motivated, and they're looking for some little tidbits to get in there. But I also want to talk to the people that just are going to feel quite lost in this time, because even just speaking to a few of my own guys and just seeing the stuff that I do on social media, it's only been a week and people are struggling. People feel like it's the end of the world. People feel like they're regressing so quickly. And, I just don't think it's happening that fast. And it's very much a mental battle for them to feel like, I feel like people are thinking about it all day long, because you're sitting down so much. You literally feel fat. When you're sitting there and watching Netflix and, sitting on a laptop, you feel sluggish, you feel yuck. So this creates this little feedback loop of, I should be moving more, I should be exercising more. Why am I doing this? I'm falling back into old habits. And that's damaging. It's very damaging. And people need those little steps and those small steps to take right now so that we don't feel that way. So then after we've built those habits that are going to maintain everything and not feel like a failure in this time, then you can build on things that are going to help you
I just think
progress.
It's not the end of the world. Else. I definitely think that it's just a small hiccup, and most people just probably need to take a step back, take a big breath, reset their focus, and kind of control what they can control and not worry about things that they can't too much. It's like, otherwise you'll just, you know, freak yourself out and make yourself sad. And that's not going to be conducive to, you know, long-term progress or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any progress for that matter. And I love that that's a bit of a recurring theme here, which is control what you can. Don't worry about what you can't. I love that because it's so true. You can only do what you can do. So look, I want to move forward. How do you plan to deliver some value to your clients throughout this time? Are you going to be specifically online? Are you going to be doing where's your head at with it?
Trying to deliver as much kind of like content, and be it like from an educational standpoint and the training standpoint, and nutrition as well, to our clients as much as humanly possible. Fortunately, with all the technology that is available, that's made a lot easier, which is great. So yeah, we're in the process of building up some like kind of systems and some new programs and services that we can deliver online and make accessible to our current clients and anyone who's looking, you know, to start up. Obviously they'll be lower cost because, you know, you can't charge a premium for, you know, something that you're trying to scale for a lot of people, just because now that personal factor's gone. But yeah, we can try and like use technology as much as possible, try and build our community remotely, to keep everyone kind of, you know, motivated, happy and healthy. Yeah, and it's like, and that's the thing, like at the moment a lot of people feel disconnected and they feel like they've, you know, lost their happy place, or they can't go to the gym, they can't go and see friends. So if we can facilitate that in some way, and keep people happy and kind of healthy to some extent, that'll be very good for the broader community.
How important do you think is having a coach during this period? Do you think people should still be keeping their coaches on? Do you think that people should reassess? Where do you stand with that?
Kind of, it's going to be an individual answer, but I think for a lot of people, it would definitely help having someone to help them through this, in terms of like decision making and problem solving for their training and nutrition and just general well-being. Obviously a lot of people start to lose their jobs, or, you know, their income isn't as stable. You know, they can't access a gym, they, you know, need to spend money on other things, and it's just like it's a very interesting situation that we're all currently in. So I imagine for a lot of people, they're now priced out of, you know, having a coach in some capacity or in all capacities, and then others will continue. I think if you can access it and it's, you know, not going to come at the cost of anything else, you know, any other financial kind of obligations that you have, then it's probably a good idea to have someone like just to outsource your training and nutrition and kind of, you know, that part of your life to someone else, and they can, you know, guide you and keep in contact with you, and it'll give you some social output as well. But I don't think it's absolutely necessary. It's like, I'll be completely honest, I think there's like, for a lot of people, there'll be other things that they need to focus on and spend money on. So yeah, if you can, it's within your means, then go
Absolutely.
for it. If you have other expenses or other obligations that you need to focus on and prioritize, then do that. I know there's a lot of like coaching services and stuff that'll be made available, like communities and stuff, and they'll be like quite cheap and quite accessible. So maybe lower investment, like coaching stuff, will be an option.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I have to give you credit, because you know you're talking to someone that has put in the hours with a lot of clients and been in the trenches, because a lot of the answers is it depends. It depends on the person, it depends on the circumstances, it depends on a million different factors. So giving these blanket statements that I'm asking you to, it's not possible. So I really respect that answer of, you know, it comes down to the individual. And that, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why the coach should be something you consider going forward. Obviously, like prices and, it has to come from a coach's point of view as well to make it more accessible in today's climate. The old model isn't going to work, and it's up to the coaches to change the way that they look at their personal training models, look at the way that they deliver their value and their content, and make it accessible in a way that people can still feel like they have someone there looking over them and making sure that they're going in the right direction, because a lot of people haven't put in the time, the effort, the money into understanding this whole side of things that we call health and fitness. It takes a lot of investment and a lot of money and time to feel confident with it and to make those decisions for other people. And when you're left to your own devices, especially with limited equipment, and you can't just go in and do your favorite exercises, I think it's only a matter of time before it gets tough for people. And just having someone to bounce off during this time, I think, is going to be super important, and it's going to go to the people that are ready to change with the industry and change with the times and the climates. And I'm honestly excited for what you guys at JPS are going to do, because you seem to be always on top of the ball with it all. Super shattered to hear about the UEBC not being able to sort of, is that still going ahead? How is it working there?
In 2021, so we've had to postpone it. It's just become completely impractical for us to host it. With these 2-week kind of self-isolation requirements, it's like all of a sudden, presenter Eric Helms gets here from New Zealand. He has to spend 2 weeks in isolation, present for 3 days, then go home and isolate for another 2 weeks. So it's not really practical. We spoke to everyone, and we all came to the decision that it's probably best just to push it back for the year, which means that unfortunately no UEBC this year, but we are currently discussing doing an online kind of Q&A or a couple of Q&As with the presenters for all the attendees to give them something in the meantime, which is going to be kind of cool. So we're just in the process of working that out at the moment. But most of the presenters have been really fantastic throughout this, and have been very open to kind of working with us in, changing the date and changing everything that comes along with it, flights, accommodation, their plans and their schedules. It is unfortunate. Very much looking forward to it. A lot of time and effort goes into it, not just by us. But we'll have it back. It will be back in 2021.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, super excited for it. Before we start to wrap up, and I want to ask you my last question, give us a little bit more about where people can find you specifically, about JPS and, what you're really about, and we'll wrap up, man. Do not know what happened there, my man. I could hear you, I just don't think you could hear me.
No, I don't know. That was super weird.
That's all right. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so people can find us on our website, which is just www.jpshealthandfitness.com.au. Otherwise, we have our 2 Instagram profiles. So we have our JPS Health_Fitness profile, and that's where we post a lot of our coaching content, and just about events and our facility and other things that we're doing. And then our JPS Education Instagram profile, where we post a lot of our educational content about our seminars and workshops and courses that we're running and just things like that. So I'm probably the last person people want to follow, but definitely go and follow our JPS Instagrams. There's a lot of useful content there, and the guys do a really good job of making it informative and relevant to anyone who's a coach or someone who just takes their training seriously.
Yeah, I 100% recommend the JPS_education page. There is just unreal content on there that not a lot of people talk about, especially in the general population, sort of general fat loss space. But there's just so many things on there that you can just go through, and graphs and infographics and things that would be super helpful just to understand without any other formal knowledge beforehand. You can get a lot out of that. And one of the posts that you made just yesterday about keeping the routine during this time just really hit home for me personally. So I wouldn't say you fell short there, man. I think you've got a lot to offer, just as far as insights with everything that you've done, especially today. I can't thank you enough for just opening up with what your thoughts are on this whole time, and what people can actually do to better themselves throughout this time. So my last question for you, if you could tell everybody one thing that if you could tell people one thing to help people look and feel their best, what would you tell them, man?
Just do something. Like that would be it. Like, do anything that will make you feel better, that's going to like have a positive outcome for you and your health and well-being. If you want to go for a run, go for a run. If you want to meditate, go meditate. Don't talk about it, don't kind of sit on your hands, just start, and actually just do something. I think most people like get stuck when they just never act on any of those kind of good intentions that they have.
Yeah, 100%. Just starting it, and that's only when you start something is when you can find out whether it was right for you or not. You can't make that decision before you've done it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
Absolutely. All right, my man, we are going to lock it off there. I can't thank you enough for jumping on board here. Hopefully we have delivered some value for our listeners, and hopefully your guys as well. It'll be nice to hear your voice during this time and feel like there's someone familiar around telling them what to do and preaching your principles. So I'm excited to see what comes of it, my man.
All right. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. It was good fun.
Absolute pleasure. Have a good one, Samuel. This won't be the last time.
Too. Definitely. Thanks, man. Have a good one.
You too, man. Bye-bye.